Hey, good morning. Well, it's good morning for me. Blue skies, lots of cloud, but not too many dark clouds. So I'm optimistic that I'll be able to use my bike to go into Taliban. So some of you may have seen a video that I put up recently in which I expressed that my options, my interests are not in what is sometimes put forward to me by Facebook or by YouTube. And one of those things was transgenders. And sure enough, somebody sent me what I considered a threatening tone in his comment. And he told me in no uncertain terms, stay in your lane. So, he doesn't post on my channel anymore. Because the thing is that we all make decisions, and depending on how we stand up on those decisions, it will have an effect on the world. That's not a grandiose view of myself. It is a fact, it can be demonstrated that we create much more effect than we think. Now, during our lives, this has been demonstrated to be true. And I'm sure that anybody who looks back on their own life while they're watching this will see and agree that this is true. What I'm about to say is that during our lives, we have milestone moments which can actually form the reality that we will live in our lives later, throughout our lives. Now, they found that people are in formative years as young as 2. Now, the transgenders, the counsellors who are promoting this whole idea of you can choose your sex have poundstoned this, even though it was denied at first. At one time, I remember that you made, according to the experts, quote unquote, you made your major decisions around the age of 8. Well, it's been shown to be true that you make your major decisions much earlier than that. So, I made, looking back on my life as a way to illustrate the way that this can happen, I made major decisions. They're not always correct, by the way. I'm not saying that we make these decisions when we're 2 and that they hold fast for your entire life. They don't. But there are obviously those that do. So I remember that I wanted to be in, I didn't think of it this way. I didn't, at 2 or 3 or 4 years old, I didn't say, I want to be a musician. And I particularly didn't say, I want to play the trombone. That was something that I was helped along with when I went to a boys' school in the army. When I first got there, I spent time in the army in the band. I was 8.5 years in the band. And first of all, before I joined my regiment, which was the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and they were actually stationed in Berlin at the time, so I didn't go there. Now, I went to the boys' school, and actually I had, as a youngster, been to see a star, a performer who had made his name playing what he said was a golden trumpet. He said his little publicity thing was that his trumpet was gold plated. So that gave him a special sound, and he was a fine player. And his name was Eddie Calvert. And Eddie Calvert played a song, a tune, called Oh Mine Papa, and I'm sure that almost anyone will have heard that in one form or another, but it first came out as a trumpet solo called Oh Mine Papa, and the man had some fame and fortune, and my parents took me to see him at what was then called the Hume Hippodrome, and we used to go there especially. We used to go and see this kind of music hall acts where different acts came on. They'd have a star, and the star was Eddie Calvert, and we used to go there for pantomimes, which is, I think, probably a special British thing, is the pantomime, which is the history of the pantomime is long and goes back a long way, several hundred years, I think. So I thought that I would love to play the trumpet, and I played the bugle as a very humble beginning in the Army Cadets, which I played in their little bugle band. So I was able to play at first on a small mouthpiece, and I thought, well, this is something that I would really like to do. My father, when I first came out of the army, when I first came out of school, I went into the coal mines. I did my training to be able to work a job in haulage. Haulage was what they called that place at the base of the pit itself, the shaft. The small, we called them tubs. The tubs would come up. They are the little containers on wheels which come up from the coal face, and the idea would be that the haulage, you would put them into the cage to go up to the surface. Well, as it happened, I finished my training and I was supposed to start work at Oldham Pit, and I never got there because my father, unbeknownst to me, had written to the bandmaster of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and the short story is that I joined, and so I found myself in Edinburgh at this makeshift sort of get-together, not a terribly organised boys' school. All it was that we had been given one dorm, and there were maybe 10 or 15 kids. I was 15, and they're all the same age. And so I went there, and I wrote to my bandmaster and said I would like to play the trumpet or the drums. Neither was available to me. It was sent back to me. The order was sent back to me. No, we don't have any vacancies or any use for another trumpet player. So we'd like you to play the euphonium. Oh my God. When I saw the euphonium, I said, I don't want to play the euphonium. So I sent back and I said, because the kids who knew a little bit more about being in a band than I did, they said, you should play the trombone. That's a great instrument. So I ended up on the trombone. So we have these milestone, they're milestone decisions that we make, sometimes out of ignorance and sometimes out of, well, those were the choices. I had several in my life, and I am leading up finally to what all of this has to do with transgenderism, if that is now an official phrase. So being able to be transgendered, you have to have decided that you don't want to be a boy after all, you want to be a girl, because you like playing with dolls or some other reasons, and you can make a major decision nowadays which really can change your life, you know. So the decisions that I made, which I know will be politically incorrect, and the little guy that sent a threatening comment to me, what he actually said was, stay in your lane. And he was quite nasty about it. So now he's blocked. He'll never have a comment on my page again, or my channel. So what were the other choices? When I came out of the army, after 8.5 years as a performer, at one time, and you probably laugh about this, that when I went to another boys' school, first of all I went for my 16th birthday, I was in Berlin. I was in Berlin on my 16th birthday as a boy soldier, a boy musician, but my rank was boy soldier. So I went there, and I didn't stay there very, very long. I had some great lessons on trombone from the principal trombone of the Berliner Philharmonic. So I really should have paid more attention there, but I didn't. I was a kid, and I'd been pushed into choosing the trombone because it wasn't the trumpet. So that's how life turns out to be sometimes. So anyway, I get to a more organized boys' school, which was in Aberdeen, and the bandmaster there was actually a very good teacher, and I learned a lot more about reading music and all the things that you have to learn. But so I spent 8.5 years essentially as a performer. Now, while I was at the school in Aberdeen, I also took Highland dancing, and that is where you have a particular formation. I'm sure if you go on YouTube you can find out Highland dancing, and the corporal who was actually our main person, he was in charge of the school at the doingness level. Okay, he kept the kids in line, sometimes out of line, and he was an excellent Highland dancer. So he formed a small team of 4 Highland dancers, of which I was one. And I remember that we did a gig we did a gig with the local British Legion, which I'll do another video on some other time, which was a catastrophe. So I was a Highland dancer, so I had that kind of build. As you may have seen now, I'm not exactly a bodybuilder, heavy weightlifter now, am I? I weigh about the same now, as I've said before. I weigh about the same as I did back then. I gotta wait for someone who's coming on a bike. Ah yes, and he's got 2 bags of rice on the back of his back. I don't know how they do it. So when I came out of the army, I went on a summer season with a band called the Crackerjacks. Now we're not talking about, this is not my history of famous things that I've done. These are jobs in music. Well, I got a job playing the trombone in a band called the Crackerjacks in a seaside resort called the Great Yarmouth, and we played and we did comedy. So it was the Crackerjacks, as the name suggests, was a comedy band. So I had a taste for doing things that were other than just playing music. And I met at that time in the same boarding house, there were 2 quite beautiful dancers who were in a show called the Ken Dodd Show. And in the Ken Dodd Show, they had a whole chorus line of dancers, and the two of the girls were in the same boarding house as I was, and obviously they got us tickets. We went to see Ken Dodd's show. Now, for Brits who are of the same vintage or close as I am, you will know Ken Dodd. Ken Dodd was something of an iconic comedian who was very, very goofy and very, very funny. Well, I've got to put my belt on. Yes, I know I should do this when we start, but I forgot. So that got me interested in dancing, and I was talking to the girls, and they said, certainly by how you look, you could be a dancer. So when I got to London, which was where I went after I finished my summer season, I actually continued my friendship with some of the other dancers who were in the same show. Because we knew the girls, we went into town on our time off, and we met all of the cast of the chorus and everything else that was involved there. So we met all of these people, and I became friends with a couple of the dancers, and I talked to them about my thoughts about becoming a dancer, and they agreed and thought that I could. Oh, it's a difficult place here because it's all in shadow. So I decided that I would like to start taking classes. If you want to be a dancer in London at that time, all you had to do was take classes, and when you were good enough, the positions were open to you. You went to auditions, and so I could have made a change right then. Now this brings me to milestone decisions that you make in your life which affect your entire life. I could have been a dancer and would have enjoyed that, except for at that time I was doing a lot of study about how to shape your life, how to set your goals, how to decide the kind of life that you want to live. And one of the things that I read, which has become quite common knowledge now, is that you are a composite of not always, it's not a hard and fast rule, but a general rule is you are a composite of the 6 most frequently associated with friends in your life. So count your friends and you will find yourself. Now, because I was friends with Peter Linden, who was a wonderful guy, he was gay. And back then, I looked at the kind of life that he led. I looked at the kind of life that his friends and associates lived. And he also took me to see another, I think the musical that he was in was called Charlie Girl, not quite sure. I could be wrong on that. But I went to see the musical that he was in, and then afterwards I went to the dressing room. And that was when I saw the kind of relationships and associations that I would have if I became a dancer. And it was mostly gay. So gay people are very affectionate. I'm not making any judgments here, except that I didn't want it for myself, okay? And I thought that if this is their life, which I am seeing in its natural form, natural for them, that they would be very familiar with each other. They're all dressing, undressing. It's the dressing room, okay? And so all of that is going on, and it's all gay. And I'm not talking about it's just happy, okay? Gay was taken and adopted by the homosexual community, and it was a less in-your-face description of how they lead their lives. And I thought, this is not for me. And I shelved, reluctantly, I shelved my wish or goal to be a dancer, and I focus more on music. So that's one of the milestone things. Now I know that there are your stay in your line type of guy, if that's what he still is, that will say, you shouldn't be saying that, you'll offend somebody. Well, it's now being realized by a lot of extremely intelligent and influential people that you cannot think without offending somebody. And while I don't wish to offend people, that life was not for me. Now, I had another moment where I was a musician. Now, when I was in the army, my thought was that I wanted to be the greatest trombone player in the world. And here's my lovely wife, and she's coming in, and I'm going to try to finish this video while she's here. So I'll be with you in a moment, honey.
Let's go to Taliban.
What?
Let's go to Taliban.
Oh, we're going to Taliban. Okay. This is where I would have gone on my bike, and obviously I'm having my orders changed. So I remember that I came back from the summer season, and I had a few other things. I played in the band of Bertram Mills circus. I was in the circus band, and that was another thing where I actually thought that I would like to, that would be fun. And I watched the clowns, and back then clowns were a benevolent, benign, friendly. They were not, we hadn't had Hollywood make these horror clowns where the clowns became murderers, and the whole clown thing became much more sinister. So back then I looked at that, and that took me back to my Crackerjack days when I did comedy in that band, and I thought I could do this. And I became friendly with one of the other guys in the band who was actually going to go on tour doing what Bertram Mills normally do, town to town, set up, do that whole thing. And that appealed to me very greatly as well. But I decided not to do that. And then I started to do work as a musician. And another thing that made me decide that I didn't want to go that way, you can see that the road is not a straight line. It can go this way or that way. The important thing is that you stay in the main. But being a musician lost its appeal for me because I wasn't a drinker, so I didn't fit in. So you can see how these things happen. I couldn't enjoy a realistic life if I was in the company of people who kept drinking. I mean hardened drinkers, not just having a little social drink, having a beer now and then, which is fine by me. But that didn't work either, and that's when other things started to come and be decided upon, which is what I did. So sometimes we have to make these decisions, and some people are going to be offended. So I'm not into the gay thing, and I'm not into the transgender thing. Neither am I into transhumanism, which is the use, what's happening there, honey? Which is the use of artificial intelligence to change the way that humans are, and supposedly to make them smarter. Elon Musk is now saying that we are being left behind by artificial intelligence, which is now capable of working on its own, on itself, to improve and expand what it can do. And because it can process billions of pieces of data, the improvement that it's making, the changes it's making, are exponential. It's not going along like this gradually, it's going straight up. So that's something else that I'm not going to be into all major decisions that you make throughout your life, which tell you what your life is going to be, which is why I'm here doing what I do with Beth, doing a mission to help. And that's what I am right now, and it's a result of major decisions that I've made throughout my life, and which you will have made. If you look back, retro back, and look at the things that changed the way that you live. And now I've got to go. We're going to Taliban. Thanks for looking with me.